8:04 AM on this Wednesday morning's OTB AM, the sports breakfast show from Off the Ball with myself and Nathan live with you until 10 o'clock. Delighted to say, a treat for us all now. Tommy Walsh is live in studio. Morning, Tommy. How are things?
Good morning, Shane.
Putting us to shame with the suit as well. Jesus, I mean,
what a man.
If we'd known, myself and Nathan could have at least put an effort in. You never do, Nathan, I know, but still
uncalled for again, isn't it? There's a lot of cheap shots here.
See, I was getting an awful lot of abuse from Nathan on the crappy quiz on Friday, so just taking my opportunity.
I won it, so that, you know,
revenge.
He did. He won it. How are you keeping, Tommy?
Yeah, great. It's great. You're listening. Coming up to probably the biggest weekend in hurling, bar the All-Ireland final, like the semi-final, since the provincials have turned into a round robin, have been probably epic, you know, and really looking forward to this weekend. I'd say our first one was probably 2018, Limerick's first
Cork semi-final.
You know, the Cork semi-final, when they're down by 6 or 7 points, only a couple of minutes to go, and how those probably 8 minutes changed the history of hurling, like, you know. And so that's what we're heading into. Hopefully another great weekend of hurling.
How have you found the championship so far, generally speaking?
I thought, to be honest, Shane, it's an outstanding championship. And, you know, I suppose it was all kind of the Munster Championship versus the Leinster Championship really for so long. But if you take each of them in their own right, the Munster Championship never lets you down. Like, you know, you go back down to the game between Cork and Tipperary, Clare. You could pick any of them. I was lucky enough that I was at the Limerick and Clare one down in the Gaelic grounds, and like that was old school championship hurling. It was just, it had the feel of if you lose you're gone, and even though you weren't gone out of the championship, it was a derby, and it just felt very much like that. And we were treated then to, normally them games, they're intense, you know, there's not much going on, only hard hitting and that, but there was extraordinary hurling in it as well, like. So you had the best of both worlds, and you had Lone up and down the sideline, like, you know, like Loughnane with his white runners those many years ago, just commanding, like, you know, and the whole crowd, and like got some feeling that night of the love and appreciation and honour and respect the Clare supporters and players had for Lohan that day, and the whole place was in it together. And listen, they won that day. Limerick got back their revenge in the Munster final, and on they go now to the semi-final as champions again, and won the Munster for the 5 in a row. The only team outside of Cork, in my knowledge, to do it, which is extraordinary for that group of players, you know, and mainly the same group of players that's doing it. They're not bringing through, you know, new guys every year or anything, like, you know, it's nearly 12, roughly around 12, and add in a couple then in and out then every year, depending on who's injured or who's in form. And then, like, you know, the Leinster Championship is, you know, not received the same. It's there.
Well, the final was good.
The final was good, right? But if you do go back and look at like the big argument a couple of weeks ago on the Sunday game was, what are we doing to promote hurling? And it's grand, we have the glory days, but like Antrim and Westmeath in the Leinster Championship, like, you talk to anyone in the hurling hotbeds below in Clonkill or Hegarty or up in Antrim in the Glens, like, that are obsessed and love hurling every bit as much as anyone in Kilkenny or Cork or Tipperary or Limerick. They deserve their day in the sun. And listen, if it leads to a few matches that are a bit lopsided and that, but if they're happy that's promoting hurling up there, we want that to happen. And we seen today Westmeath went on and beat Wexford. Like, you couldn't predict that. And go back to the underage setups with Westmeath. It didn't come out of nowhere. Westmeath beat Kilkenny in under 21 championship not so long ago when Eddie was over them, and nobody saw that coming, so it didn't come from nowhere. So 16-point turnaround, that was brilliant. The day down in Wexford Park as well, when Wexford had to win to ensure that they're in the Hegarty Cup next year. Like, that was an extraordinary day. Now, I wasn't at a christening to go to that day myself, I missed it, but you know, mother and father down there, a lot of people I know were down there asking about like the atmosphere, like they sang Bool of Oak before it, just to, you know, bring in the atmosphere and the tradition and the history of Wexford hurling. And you know, do a bit of work down Wexford, like that meant an awful lot to them. And you listen to the radio interviews, Tom Dempsey and these guys on the radios, like, you know, very emotional. And so on both sides, Leinster and Munster, they both offer different things, Shane. And go on into the last one, Tony Kelly, like, not hurling Millen scores 3-4.
Yeah.
Like,
who's your favourite hurler to watch?
To watch now? I love Hegarty. Outside of Kilkenny, like, you know, for Kilkenny I love Mullen, Adrian Mullen. I suppose I've been watching all the Mullins since they're young chaps, like, but with Adrian, you know, he's that whole Ballyhale craft and toughness and fitness, but the skill and just a joy to watch as well. And sure, but Hegarty from Limerick is somebody, like, you know, and especially with the criticism and the scrutiny that's because I just know from playing the game, like, you go in to get the ball, like sometimes you know the hurl get, you know, it's
go on, what
things can happen. Yeah,
well, I'm saying you go for the ball, like, it's just, like, there's so many variables, like, when you're going for it. It's not like soccer where there's the one ball in your foot, like, you can't slide tackle obviously in soccer anymore, like, you know, it's a red card, but hurling's nearly gone to the point where if you go for a tackle and you miss it, you know. Remember Cork there a couple of years, it was that game, no, it was against Waterford, I'd say the year in 2017 when Damien Kelhan went for a tackle and just was sidestepped, and next minute I think he got a second yellow. I just felt that's not the way, like, because just when you're watching hurling, it looks terrible on television and that, but when you're in the game, you go full-blooded for the ball, and sometimes, you know, you miss the ball. Yeah. And that shouldn't mean huge scrutiny with, you know, slow down cameras, and because it can look terrible, like, you make that look terrible. But listen, Hegarty anyways will be one guy. Galan at the moment is the best hurler in the country, I think. He's just unmarkable at the moment, so if any of us beat Limerick, I think they'll have to mark Galan.
A couple of things on that, just on Hegarty. So there's been quite a few incidents over the last couple of years, quite a few red cards, like the one that happened this year, and just the ferocity of the shoulder, the way he went into that tackle. As much as you want that physicality, does he, with that scrutiny that he's under, does he not need to change his approach to the game? Is he not putting his team potentially at risk when managers are clearly watching them, or referees are clearly watching them?
Yeah, well, what about the tackles that's been put in Hegarty for the ball? I would say, like, you know, like, you see, it's tough on forwards these days, Nathan. Like, you know, like, say you take 20 years ago, you were told, forget about the referee, you look after yourself. So cornerback, wing back, they're always up, maybe shoving you in the back, pulling your jersey, you know, maybe off the ball stuff that nobody can see. And the umpires don't really get involved, like, you know, it's mainly down to the referee, and he can't see everything. He only has two eyes. So, like, what does a forward do? Like, you know, you can't, you know, hit a fella deep back anymore, because you get a red card. You know. So, like, if you're in, you know, and you never see a back in a red card for shoving a lad or pulling his jersey or digging him. So, like, you know, Hegarty went, you know, he was a little bit late in that jostle down, and it was on the sideline. It just happened to be in front of the bench, which made it look a lot worse. But you know, there's probably has to be a bit of protection for the forwards as well that are suffering these off the ball, you know, like, off the ball challenges, if you like. But that's why you see there's a lot more diving nowadays. Do you ever see, you know, when a fella gets a bit, he's down holding his, but he's probably he has no other choice really, because he can't hit a lad back, like, you know, you can't do that. So you're a red card. So I just have a lot of sympathy for forwards nowadays. I was probably the back doing that forwards for years, but
have you seen the diving?
They were able to give it back to me, so it was all bother.
Has the diving creeped in slowly, or was that something that existed when you were a player, but just maybe less so? Never
existed, Shane, but like, never existed back then, like, but there was no red cards really back then unless you did something, you know, that was deserving of a red card, like, you know. So
your sense is that the diving has crept in because forwards have to try and it's the only way they can get the defenders punished.
I don't think there's any protection for them, like, you know, and, you know, you can't have 6 referees like an American football game either. Listen, you're just looking at a free taking competition, so listen, that's just their way the game will evolve to again, and on they'll go. But no, listen, I'd have no, like, I don't think there's any issues in the game at the moment. Like, there's always talks about rule changes and we'll change this, we'll change that. Hurling is epic at the moment, like, you know, why would you change anything?
You hear people saying there's too many scores, but that's kind of an argument that has, I guess, been around the weight of the sliotar and stuff as well. Yeah,
well, scores are probably doubled probably in the last 15-20 years, but I think that's more to do with the ping in the ball. Like people say the ball hasn't changed. the ball has changed. Like if you play the game, the ball has changed. Like the ping, yeah, the weight might be the same. If you hit a ball now, you can glide the ball over on the run from 60, 70 yards. Like, you know, beforehand you'd have to give it your almighty 100% Johnny McMahon effort to score the ball from 80 yards, lads, you know. So the ping and the ball has changed, like as in.
I think Patrick Horgan actually said, he was on with us recently, and Horgan said like the ball has improved the last year or two, because he remembers a couple of years ago even hitting frees, and he wasn't exactly sure, you know, he was hitting it the usual way, but he wasn't exactly sure where it was going to go trajectory wise. But now, you know, it's pure, and you can actually, from 60, 70 metres, you can exactly tell where it's going to go. So players have clearly got to grips with the new sliotar. It's one of the things that I guess was an issue in the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, and you see, when you got the ball in the half backline, full backline, you gave it an almighty effort. It went in as far as the full back, you know, the full forward line, we'll say, and then the action off it went again there, a good full forward versus good full back, and so on and so forth. So that's why you're seeing a lot more. When they give it the almighty effort now, it's gone wider over the bar.
We were saying before we started, the build up to the semi-finals feels maybe a little quieter than it usually does. Like it's Wednesday, Galway Limerick on Saturday, you've Clare-Kilkenny on Sunday. It doesn't feel like All-Ireland semi-final week. Maybe it's because there were 4 All-Ireland quarterfinals in the football last weekend that we're still digesting, and also that, as you were saying, Nathan, there hasn't been much in the line of media.
There's not even looking at the papers today, and maybe I've missed a couple, but like Pat Horgan has been interviewed in all the papers talking about TJ Reid. So they're trying to get players from the counties that have been knocked out to talk about the 4 counties that are still in it to make a story. From what I'm aware, I don't think any of the 4 counties did any media at all ahead of this. And again, I'm sure everyone watching is going, tough lads, it's not about ye. But just for people trying to get excited about this, to get to know a little bit more about the players. I know Kilkenny used to and still do a great final press night, and they get everyone down to Langton's, and you get the bit of steak and all that down there, and Cody'd have the chat, and you'd get 5 or 6 players as well. But it does feel as though, and it's not just hurling and football, they're not helping themselves with the lack of access to players at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose they're afraid there's so much going on. The media and social media is now, they're probably trying to protect their players, and that they feel that's their duty. Like you look at, say, John Kiley, like this weekend, there is so much to promote. Like John Kiley, I see he's been in 12 national finals, hasn't lost one. He's trying to get to the All-Ireland final again to make it 13 out of 13. Henry Shefflin over Galway. Like Shefflin has won 10 All-Irelands as a player. He's won 3 or 4 club All-Irelands as a player. He's won 2 club All-Ireland finals as a manager. I wonder, is he trying to become the first manager to win as a player and as a manager an All-Ireland club and an All-Ireland senior inter-county? Like, that's incredible stuff to do.
Just so he'll have it over Cody.
Yeah, sure. Cody probably has it all except for an All-Ireland winning club as a manager. So that'll tell you how hard it is.
That photo of Cody, like was it the Leinster final when Kilkenny got the last minute goal? He's in the crowd giving an absolute load.
Brilliant.
I don't think I'd ever seen Brian Cody smile that much.
Yeah, it was. That was an amazing day, because it was so dramatic.
Yeah,
like you were up 8 points in the Leinster final. Galway bring it down. They had the ball in the safest place of all time, was in the corner underneath the Davin stand, and you couldn't see a goal coming from it. And Killian Buckley, then, who was defender for most of his career, gets the chance and slots it lovely into the corner. And like I said to the lads, I was working on that game as well, I say thank God it wasn't live, because it would have been like local radio. And you could see that, I think, emotion in all the Kilkenny people that day and the supporters. But Cody was always a great man to celebrate a win. Like, he never shied away from, you look at him after any of his All-Ireland victories, before that he kept it calm enough, because the ultimate goal was to win the All-Ireland. But when he won All-Irelands, he was a great man to show his emotions, and absolutely unreal. And sure, listen, that's what we're looking into to Saturday, Galway and Limerick. Could be historic.
Can you see it going any way other than a Limerick victory? I guess the question is, you mentioned Gillane, Galway can't really allow Gillane to score 1-4 inside and expect to go on and win the game. Is Dahi Burke the man you put on Gillane, or how do you marshal him?
I'd probably leave Garrod in on it. Like, I wouldn't change around the team at this stage. Garrod, I know he was taken off the last day, but sometimes if you had a poor game the first day, so here's the All-Ireland quarter final, you're revved up. There's no needs to talk to you at all in the next 2 weeks, because you'll have your own self, already. And I'd say Garrod McInerney, knowing him, knowing the way he's been playing over the last couple of years, he will be absolutely. Now he'll need plenty of support from his defenders, Dahi Burks and Pádraig Mannion with him, and Joseph Cooney, because you never defend on your own. Like JJ Laney used to always say that with us, like, you don't ever defend on your own. You're always defending with someone, and that's the sign of the great defences, that they defend together. So if McInerney is in there, when that ball breaks, he'll need his cornerbacks, he'll need his wing backs hoovering in around him. But it is an incredible task what he has to take on. He has to take on Gillan. I'd leave out Dahi centre back, try and shore up the middle. But listen, Galway, can they beat Limerick? Like, they're the one team that have always beaten favourites in semi-finals. Like, you go back to 0-1 when Kilkenny were the all-conquering team 2000, and they won the Leinster final again in 2000 and they shocked Kilkenny in that semi-final. And Richie Murray out midfield, they gave it loads in the throw-in before the game. Eugene Clown in a goal with I think it was a kick into the back of the net. Kevin Broderick, the solo and ball over the Kenny defender's head. Like, they're a brilliant team in semi-finals. They're afraid of no one in semi-finals. Even go back to 0-5, the only All-Ireland semi-final our team lost was that 0-5 one against Galway. And Shefflin said after the last game, he's waiting for the team to spark. Well, they sparked in 0-5 and they have often sparked in semi-finals. 0-15, go back to 15 when the Tipperary, the great Tipperary team of the Conans and Noel McGrath and that, they were hot favourites in that final. Galway turned them over again in 17. Tipperary All-Ireland champions, so they have history. They have history in doing it. They know how to
hang in there. I was listening to Scahill on the hurling pod a couple of weeks ago, making the point, people sort of talk about Galway at times as if there's some sort of mental weakness and that they collapse. Like, if you look at, as you go through their championships over the last decade even, generally it's one score. They're there right till the bitter end, so they can hang on in there. And maybe just, like, it's a bit of confusion as to where Limerick are. Obviously Declan Hanna been out injured, there's been a few injuries. Keane Lynch still not sure as to exactly where he is. And, like, is there a pressure of the 4 in a row? Like, when you think back to 2009 and Kilkenny getting the 4 in a row, was that a ye coming back to the pack, or was that Tip catching up?
Yeah, well, I definitely think in 0-4 it was hugely intense when we were going for the 3 in a row. That time you couldn't do a 3 in a row. If you remember that time, like, to do a 2 in a row was an amazing feat. So to do a 3 in a row was like going to be historic. And definitely 0-4 that year. The whole year was like Limerick's year this year. It was tough. You were fighting against the fight all year long, and eventually Cork blew us away in the All-Ireland final. Just, I think it was a 17 points to 9, just kind of a cakewalk near the end, really. Like, the whole fight, I wouldn't say the fight was gone out of us, but the freshness was definitely gone. And Limerick have been like that so far. Now, the only thing for Limerick is it happened so early in the season. Like, they were flying it in the league, suddenly they went through that round robin. So have they had 4 weeks now to just freshen up? Remember John Kiley was talking about giving them a week off and then we'll get going for the semi-final. Like, he is the master of psychology.
The freshness isn't something you can fake.
Absolutely not. But if they did take a week off and possibly took it easy, like, the pressure.
When you talk about freshness, is that a physical thing or a mental thing?
It's mostly mindset, I'd say, in my view. Like, remember Bill Hensey used to play for Tullaroan. He was on the Kenny team in the 92, 93 and a couple of years at 91 as well, a couple of years after that. But the great Willie O'Connor used to say to him that time, he'd rather be fresh than fit. And it's huge, because when you're fresh, you're hungry. You'd go off, you'd win a ball you shouldn't win. The ball will be there, and you'll put in your foot, you'll put in your hand, you'll put in your head. Like, remember Larry Murphy, and there was the 96 or 97 Leinster final. It was a Jerry Canning, or one of the lads said during the game watching it, Larry Murphy, he put in his head, or other lads wouldn't put their hurl. That's freshness. That's hunger. That's savagery. And that's what you need when you come, because usually when you get to semi-final stage and final stage, there's not much between the teams, and it could be that one. Like, you take Limerick and all their greatness and all their all-conquering team, they win a lot of matches, be a point or two. So one lad putting in his head where another lad wouldn't put his hurl could turn them over, and I thought Clare did that earlier on in the year, because eventually they only ended up winning, be a point or two. So it could be that one tackle. Like, people always say about the mistakes, geez, if we didn't make that mistake, mistakes happen. And if you don't go for it. You won't ever make mistakes. But it could be the ball that, we'll say, if you think of the ball that you go for, not the mistake that you made, but if I had to win for that ball, a diving block maybe, or a flick, or went for, followed your man instead of not following him that one time, that could be the difference in turning over a team. So listen, will Limerick have that the weekend? Who knows? They've dealt with a lot of controversies, red cards, yellow cards, injuries, huge amount of long-term injuries over the time. Possibly maybe the likes of, like, I have them down with a couple of just superstars. Sean Finn, Cian Lynch will be two of them. Finn is out. Cian Lynch hasn't been playing lately. So they could have huge impacts on the team.
When you're talking about freshness and even mental freshness, Tommy, like, do you mean, like, I guess when there's a 1 week gap between matches, you're straight back onto the training pitch for recovery and all the rest on the Monday or Tuesday, no time to really relax? Whereas maybe if you have a 2 week break, you can have the couple of pints on the Saturday night or Sunday night, and maybe the takeaway on the Sunday night as well, and not feel too bad about it. Is it that opportunity to park it and remove yourself from the game that you mean?
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is probably short as well,
right,
Shane. So you're probably more looking at 3 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks is still short. 2000 and I'd say it was 13. I think it was 13. We played Dublin in Portlaoise, and no, it was 12. The year Galway beat us in the Leinster final. We were absolutely psyched for, I think Dublin were after beating us in the league final the year before, so we still had that kind of hanging over us, up in betting us in league final bet as well, and the daily was over him. So we had Dublin and Portlaoise in the Leinster semi-final the year after 2012, and they were people were starting to tip them to beat us. So we were absolutely on the money for not 2 weeks, I'd say 6 months waiting for this game. And we absolutely, I'd say, played over our skins that day. The Leinster final was 2 weeks later, and we weren't ready for it. Galway blew us out of the water. So I would say probably 3-4 weeks, and that's why I would give Limerick the chance of freshness coming back. Is it 4 weeks since the Munster final? That's a week off, and then probably 2 weeks of in-house games, and then this week probably fresh enough again. So I give him this 4 weeks could have been huge to the freshness of Limerick.
Can it be too big a gap for Limerick?
Not if you have a great team and a great panel, because you can have great matches in training. I think the 4 or 5 week break, 6 week break, if you rewind back to the Munster champions over the years, they used to suffer. They used to win a Munster final for the first time in years. They'd have a 6 week break to the semi-final and they'd get beaten. But the teams with the great panels, I felt, had a much bigger advantage, because you would have them challenge matches against players that were just as good, if not better, than the starting team in training. Like if you look at this Limerick team at the moment, we'll say, they're marking subs that, Cian Lynch, these guys, Richie English, so the subs are brilliant. Peter Casey on and off, Graham Mulcahy. So you can imagine marking them lads in training. You're getting ready for it all day, probably for the 2 days previous, just to have a great day in training. So the teams with the big panels have a huge advantage in that sense. And I'd say Galway do have a good panel this year. Clare have a very good panel. You have guys on and off that. Ian Galvin's on and off the team. Great backs in there, Flanagan and Shanna Morey, the lads on and off that field. So I think the 4 teams left in it have good panels.
Can I just ask you one last thing on Limerick then, and the way they set up with, you talk about the superstars. Declan Hannon is like the steady Eddie in that team, the captain, guaranteed 8 out of 10 minimum in every game. Who replaces Hannon?
So Hannon, I would imagine you won't change around your team too much. So I'd say probably Colin Collin will come in. I'd say centre back, unless they bring over Kyle Hayes, but he's so effective on, especially in Croke Park. He kind of goes up and down that left wing underneath. Say if they're playing down to the Davin, up and down that Cusack stand, and a lot of times people don't kind of follow him. I'm sure Sheffield will probably have a man to mark him this weekend, but I'd be probably slow to take him out of centre and just nip him, Colin Coughlin, straight in centre back. But usually you don't want to make too many changes to a team. But what Declan Hannon is he's the guy that can, the old school, hover around centre back. He lets Burns then go up a bit and do his shooting. He lets Kyle Hayes go up and down, because he's the one constant, always there to cover the full back. They do a lot of out balls. The Limerick team, they're probably the best team in the business at coming out with the ball in transition, and he's there, and you can't keep your eye off him either, because he'll come up and hit the ball and run over the bar from 70 yards. So yeah, no, listen, Hannon will be a huge loss, but they have a good guy to come in instead of him.
Saw Michael Dignan suggesting, Limerick could throw a curve ball and maybe throw Cian Lynch at 6, would allow Cathal O'Neill to go back in at 11. He was great off the bench in the Munster final as well. But as you say, maybe it's too late in the day to make changes that drastic, possibly, is it?
I think that's a bit drastic. That'd be a big one, all right. It wouldn't be one night, Cian Lynch will be, if we talk about Declan Hannon staying back in the pocket, Cian Lynch, I would imagine that natural draw of him to go up and put the ball over the bar, and probably his genius is in his creative genius, that he's hovering around, he's able to open up a defence with a split ball. If he's back trying to be disciplined and covering back, like half of a defender's job is running back towards his own goal to help out and to take balls back off opposition forward. So probably
that's the ultimate. It's Cian Lynch as a defender. Maybe a bit of creative genius in the half back line is exactly what they need.
Yeah. Freshen him up.
He couldn't defend. The parade is going on. It's a massive insult there.
He couldn't possibly do it.
No, not for me.
No. The Clare-Kilkenny game then on Sunday, it appears, it's recorded reports today, John Conlon and Dave McInerney are winning their races. They're expected to feature, which is good news obviously for Clare fans. That's massive, isn't it? It could have been the turning point in the game, Conlon and McInerney not being fit.
Yeah, well, it probably was last year.
Yeah.
Semi-final against Kilkenny, Conlon out and Tony Kelly kept by Mikey Butler, because Conlon is just like a half back line, whatever about defending, he has to be the guy getting the ball into the forwards. And if you have a good forward line like Clare have at the moment, what they need is ball. The more ball they get, the better, the more damage they'll do. Mark Rogers in the corner, Ian Galvin in the corner, Peter Duggan will cause chaos with the high balls coming in for the Shane O'Donnells and that coming in. So I think John Conlon is crucial, because his man might score a couple of points, but he's driving all day long. Plus he's the spiritual leader of that Clare team. If Lohan is the spiritual leader on the sideline, John Conlon is definitely on the team. Tony Kelly will get the scores and he'll drive him from forward line, but in the backs, people love a back that comes out with the ball and creates huge opportunities for the forwards, and Conlon is definitely that man. We seen him in the first time when his brother's wedding, the huge scenes after that when Conlon was brilliant. But listen, he'll have his work cut out. The half back line McInerney, not sure what his injury was before the semi-final, didn't know a whole lot about it, or the Munster final, but that half back line is crucial for them. You go back to any All-Ireland winning teams, the half back lines are the guys that stop the ball going into a good full forward line, and they're the team that drive on getting the ball into their own forward line. So you have Diarmuid Ryan, who was probably having one of the seasons of his life, McInerney on the other side, and Conlon in the middle. If you're a half forward, you're not going to be marking any of them. So I think it's huge for Clare that they have John Conlon. Then the big one will be Tony Kelly versus Mikey Butler. Can Mikey Butler do it twice in a row? Very difficult to do, a huge challenge for him, but listen, if anyone can do it, Mikey can.
Is it difficult to do it twice in a row? Have you not figured it out the first time?
You figured it out, yeah. As soon as you have something figured out, it's like golf. I don't play golf, but here, lads, you think if it figured out, then it all goes.
Same as snooker, Tommy. I know you play snooker as well. Same thing. You feel like once you've done it once, you can do it, but it doesn't always be that simple, I suppose.
Yeah, well, there's so many variables in hurling, especially at least in maybe set piece games like that, you can maybe visualise and that, but anything can happen in hurling. Tony runs one way, the ball breaks another way, suddenly but listen, Tony, he scored 3-4 the last day. Like I said it there during the week, that if you scored 3-4 in training, you'd expect Michael D. Higgins to come down the helicopter and shake her hand, but but amazing stuff, for him to be still doing it at 29 or 30 years of age. So that'll be huge. But the one thing for Tony is the weekend, he's huge backup. If they do hold him, Rogers is absolutely flying it in the corner. Shane O'Donnell is in the form of his life. He's now scoring 1-2 or 1-3 the last day. I thought he fell into the trap the last couple of years, before maybe last year, of just, I'm the provider, I'll keep setting him up, and score yourself if the opportunity is there. I think Shane is doing that again this year, and he had a massive couple of games now as well, and definitely Doug. I mean, if you have small players like Kelly and Rogers and Galvin, these lads, you need a few big lads to do it up. And Davy Fitzgerald, he's an absolute rocket for a big man. Like, I know he's 6'4", 6'5", but speed, when he goes, he's gone, and he can set up opportunities then for the lads. So listen, the pressure won't be on just Conan and Tony Kelly. Clear of good forwards.
We should, before I let you go, Tommy, get your predictions. I know they're probably two difficult games to call, same as last year, but how you feel both are?
Yeah, sure, the Kilkenny clear one. I'm going to go with James Skehill's way of predicting things. I think Kilkenny will win it because I really, really want them to win.
What's wrong with that? Yeah.
So
good logic.
I liked it. And in the first semi-final, then I think Limerick are the champions, deserve to be favourites, and it'll take a great team to stop them. They have the 4-week break. Said it time and time again, freshness is crucial when you're champions. They've had 4 weeks now to freshen up. They've Keane Lynch now to come back in, off of, you'd imagine he'll be picked Sunday and be raring to go. Hegarty hasn't been going particularly well. Tom Morrissey and Gillan were probably the main guys for the last couple of months, really driving that team on. Diarmaid Burns, but yeah, I think Limerick will they will just pip it on Saturday.
Limerick Kilkenny final. Heard it here first.
Go again.
Exactly. We'll chat to you again before the final there. Tommy, thanks for popping in as always. A pleasure. Thanks for being with us.